crisis would have been far worse. So your comments, please, Mr. Alvarez and Mr. Baxter.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We do believe that the facilities that we established, that the Federal Reserve established, did ease the crisis, and they certainly were designed to do that. The studies that are beginning to come forward now are starting to show that they actually were successful in unfreezing various markets, the commercial paper market, the asset-backed securities market, providing liquidity to the financial system that was important for the financial system to continue to operate. The funding that we provided was provided without any losses to the taxpayer. Indeed, the emergency lending facilities resulted in $9 billion worth of interest and fees that were passed on to the Treasury. As I was explaining to Congressman Jones, the facilities were designed to provide real relief to American consumers and small businesses in the form of student loans, in the form of auto loans, small business loans, credit card loans, as well as allowing the operation of companies that relied on the commercial paper market, which had frozen up, to continue to find a source of funding to keep their operations going. So we think that the facilities were successful and were a good use of the taxpayer funds.
I would say that there is an impression, and I hear it, I think other members of Congress hear it, that's out there, that all of the actions the Fed took during the crisis served only to help financial institutions. But I want to make clear the point that, and I want to make sure that people understand that all of these actions were in the form of loans, and in fact over $125 billion has been returned to the Treasury over and above what was loaned out. That's what I read. I want to know if that's true. Is that true?
So we have, in the last 2 years, provided about $127 billion in earnings to the Treasury. Yes, that's correct.
But can you bring this down to Main Street? Can you give the committee members and the general public some examples of how that lending helped not only stabilize the economy and keep our financial institutions in place, but literally helped Main Street and working men and women?
So I'd like to return to the TALF program, which was one specifically designed to make sure that loans were made in the United States to help students obtain education loans for college, to help small businesses have SBA loans, credit card loans, to provide auto lending, to provide equipment leasing, and a variety of other kinds of loans that were not being made during the financial crisis because of liquidity shortages. That program was extraordinarily successful.
Is it still operating?
It is. It has closed, but there are still about $14 billion in loans outstanding. There were $70 billion of credits extended through the program through its life. Much of it has been repaid.
I'd like to ask about a number of programs that the Fed engages in, including holding gold for countries, account services, liquidity programs. In your experience, are these common activities for central banks?
Yes, Congresswoman, they are common for central banks. It is common for central banks around the world to hold reserves. And as you know, the dollar is the principal reserve currency. At the Federal Reserve in New York, we hold over $3 trillion on behalf of foreign central banks and countries. It is very important to hold those sizable reserves because those sizable reserves are principally invested in Treasury securities, which helps to finance the debt of the United States. So holding dollar reserves is a very important function of the Federal Reserve, and we do that at the New York Fed. And it is similar to functions that other foreign central banks perform around the world.
My time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I yield 5 minutes to Mr. Green from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank the witnesses for appearing as well. And I'm interested in the central banks of other countries as compared to our country, and disclosure that they engage in compared to our country. And I know that the systems are not going to be the same, but with reference to disclosure, can you give some indication so that we can have some